Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Steve Davis, author of Undercurrents, Channeling Outrage to Spark Practical Action. Steve also lectures at the Stanford Graduate School of Business and is a Senior China Strategy Advisor and Interim Director for the China Country Office for the Gates Foundation. He also serves as co-chair of the WHO Digital's Health Technical Advisory Group and is a distinguished fellow with the World Economic Forum. Steve, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thanks. Nice to see you.
COVID-19 has impacted the global landscape in unprecedented ways, from health to business to the economy to social awareness and community. But there are some silver linings to the trends and advocacy that has been accelerated as a result of the pandemic. Tell us how the post-COVID-19 environment will offer unprecedented opportunities for business of all types and sizes to get involved with social activism. What's the most meaningful macro trend?
Yeah, there are, of course, no shortage to the challenges that COVID's presenting the globe, and I don't want to dismiss the tragedy that it's created, both health and economic. But there are some interesting things that have happened. Obviously, that's shining a spotlight on some of the challenges we have in the world. So I think people are actually rolling up their sleeves and saying we've got to do something a little bit different when we come out of here. I particularly have been focused on the digital pandemic, if you will, the amazing amount of innovation that we've seen come out of this just in the last year in terms of people thinking about new tools, new approaches, but things we need to address that are overdue, like how do we make sure they're interoperable? How do we make sure that there's better normative guidance so we know, what the rules of the road are? And so I'm pretty excited about the fire hose of innovation that this has created and the opportunities for big companies and small social entrepreneurs and hackers all to get involved.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And the great thing that we've seen with technology and innovation is how it opens up the opportunity for a more diverse and inclusive workforce, since we have more geographical flexibility as well. I think that's going to be another trend. But let's talk about being aligned with social goals. That was a big theme for this year. Do you think consumers spend accordingly when businesses are aligned with their social values?
Yeah, I think we've seen good examples and some new data on this, that in fact that reputation and goodwill, not to everyone, but matters to a lot of consumers around the world. And, and particularly in times of crises, these things show up differently. So I think people are seeing the way different companies have behaved in the pandemic are actually now getting correlated to the way they're emerging out of the pandemic, if well, we're still in it, but the way the recovery will happen. And so I am actually, I think the line between business and social activism is blurring more and more as we see all sorts of ways investors are thinking differently and consumers are thinking differently. And I think that's a good sign for the world.
Well, we like to think that business leaders are aligned with these social goals. They have to face a realization of what it means to the balance sheet and the bottom line, of course. Do you think aligning the business with consumer social demand really does impact the bottom line?
Look, these are hard trade-offs at times, and I've been both a corporate CEO and a nonprofit CEO and been on boards of both, and know that it's not as, there's no kumbaya message here, that it's always a win-win, that you've got to make some trade-offs. And certainly the business community is a very heterogeneous community with lots of different capabilities and needs and political views, etc. That said, we are seeing more evidence that the alignment between good ESG scores, environmental, social, and governance scores, and levels of activism, and the actually level of employee engagement in the community correlate highly with strong financial performance. And there's been some very interesting studies, I talk about it in my book, about gender equality and how the data is showing that companies that have embraced gender equality are performing better.
Let's play devil's advocate here a bit. And of course, we have to think about cancel culture when we make these decisions. What about alienating those who may have other social and political beliefs? The 2020 election has shown that Americans are divided nearly down the middle. And when you think about consumerism, like sports and entertainment, we view these places as a way for escapism. Why does it have to infiltrate also how we spend our money?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and honestly, some days I do think I'm the biggest escape artist there is when it comes to Netflix addiction and things like that. So I get it. That said, many of these issues are not. We need to turn them not into political issues, I guess, is the issue. That so I think one of the greatest tragedies in the U.S. right now is that we've let a pandemic become a political issue as opposed to a health issue that we got to sort out. And so I would say we do need to find ways that people can sort of navigate their lives without being beaten up all the time and feeling. But I do think some of these questions are so important for the sake of our country and our economy that we've got to keep finding all the avenues. Just one other comment about this. I do think that we have to understand that a lot of what are some of the impending large social and political challenges of our lifetime are going to involve some behavior change. Behavior change will be required for us to figure out how to manage our climate change. People will require change around, you were seeing it today around mask wearing and other things. So those things, to get to the communities to do things differently, do require us to use the tools of media and the tools of consumer behavior in order to make that happen.
Yeah, I'm just about 3/4 of the way done with the book. And when you were speaking about that, I found myself nodding my head like, yes, yeah, that's exactly it. We do have to have some sort of accountability. And it's one thing to have an external strategy, but what about the growing opportunities and programs internally at companies for direct employee engagement on social issues?
Yeah, it's a great piece, and in fact, I wrote an article last year on this, and about how there's different ways that we've actually worked from the World Economic Forum, and I'm being sort of working on both sides of these issues, that of how corporations, big and small, engage in social change and community activism. And in fact, one of the most interesting trends is the power of that employee engagement directly, bit more than corporate philanthropy or more than maybe different CSR projects, corporate social responsibility projects, actually giving we're finding sort of mid-sized tech companies the ability for them to ask their employees. We did this with Tableau and a few other big companies to engage directly on things like helping us solve the problem of malaria in Africa. Is not only a great way to use corporate assets, it's actually amazing for corporate morale and goodwill internally, and it's actually a way to deploy smart people to help use their skills and talent in a small way. It's not like their full-time job, but to help us so I think there's going to be more of that. We know the millennial generation is going to push it. We know that the pandemic has exposed a lot, and so I hope to see more and more of that employment engagement model in corporate America.
All right, Steve Davis, author of Undercurrents, channeling outrage to spark practical action. It was great to have you on Trade Talks. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
You got it. And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.